So good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Principal of Nagaon College, Dr. Sharad Barkotoki, respected Coordinator of our IQSC, Dr. Krishnakant Medhi, Head of the Department of Philosophy, Mr. Bhupal Kolita, my esteemed colleagues and participants from different parts of India, lovers of philosophy from Nepal and Sri Lanka. Last few months, meeting online has been our daily practices. This webinar is one such practice. When going outside is not safe, stay safe indoors and work from there. You can't resist the line of Tagore, who asked Tora Jashni go Tora Jashni Gharer Bahir. Tagore wrote, sullen clouds are gathering fast over the black fringe of the forest. Oh child, do not go out. Again, it is Basa time for rain retreats in Theravada Buddhist tradition. During this time, the monastics are asked to stay indoors because their traveling outside may harm the newly grown crops and the small insects that come out during rainy time may be crushed underfoot. The current situation tells that coronavirus is there, stay indoors. But these limitations cannot stop us from doing our duty, our dharma. Yes, duty. It is the theme of today's webinar. We all know Gita Swadharma says that we have to act out according to skill and talents. Bradley's maestration duty emphasized positional duty. Well, our principal sir, Dr. Sharad Barkotoki, to deliver his welcome speech. So please, it is over to you, sir.
Thank you. The COVID-19 has exposed us to a new reality where the virtual world is much more important than before. It is rightly mentioned by Dr. Ramula Sharma. And in order to keep our academic activities, we have organized many conference, webinar with collaboration of the IQSC. And it is a part of our academic activities. I want to offer my gratitude to Professor K.C. Pandey, who took a lot of pains for joining us in this webinar. And I also thank to our proactive team of Philosophy Department headed by Dr. Professor Bhupal Kolita. I also thank the other dignitaries and IQSC coordinator Dr. Medhi and participants. It is my proud privilege to welcome all of you this afternoon to this webinar. The philosophy is a way of thinking about the world, the universe, and society. It works by asking very basic questions about the nature of human thoughts, the nature of universe, and connection between them. The idea of philosophy are often general, but is large. I would not want to mention anything because I am a layman about I do not know about the more philosophy, but I know that I go on through the Gita. The Gita they mention the duties. And when I read the Mahatma Gandhi's concept of duty, the idea of duty may be taken to be core of the Gandhiji's teaching and philosophy. All things will be discussed in this webinar. I think that your knowledge is sharing here and it will be enrich us. I hope this webinar will be success and your interaction, your participation will greatly help this webinar. Once again, I welcome you. Thank you, all of you. Over to Dr. Ramala Sharma.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. You have so beautifully expressed about our webinar. Now, I would like to request our coordinator of IQSC, Dr. Krishnakant Medhi, to speak a few words about our college. Now, it is over to you, sir. Medhi, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ramala Sharma. Person of this today's webinar and our very proactive principal sir of Nagaon College, Dr. Sarat Bhargoti, respected resource person of this webinar, Professor K.C. Pandey, University of Lucknow, respected all participants from different corners of the country, all the organizing committee members and our guests and students. It's a very proud privilege for me to welcome you all once again to this webinar. And as IQC member, I had to shoulder many responsibilities during this COVID-19 pandemic period, and we need to carry out our all academic activities and exercises. And as a part of this, we requested all the departments to organize such type of programs, and philosophy department is no exception to it. And the department has organized this such a beautiful webinar on a particular topic, like concept of duty of Indian philosophy. Though I am a man from science, so the duty of a student or duty of a person from science background, it may be quite different from philosophical point of view. So we are very eagerly want to listen Professor K.C. Pandeyji. And now I like to throw a little light about Nagaon College, because most of the participants from different corners of the country are not aware of our college. So our college was established in 1944. It's a long 76 years back. And since then, the college has achieved so many achievements and significant development throughout its 76 years of journey. Started with only 7 students and a single faculty of arts, the college now can boast of all the 3 streams and more than 3,000 students and 85 faculties, capable faculties of various elite publications to their own credits. Apart from 25 UG departments, there are 8 PG departments and 4 PhD programs, as well as 3 open and distance learning programs being run by this college. The college has also a very beautiful library with more than 60,000 books and enormous numbers of publications of students, teachers, and other faculties, and other assets of this college. We have several skill-based programs like BVOC programs. We have institutional biotech hubs. Apart from our own our college maintained skill-based courses, and apart from well-managed classrooms, and there are several ICT managed classes and all other facilities available in the college for better student support. The college has all its strong stockholders, namely students, faculties, parents, authorities, and alumni, which play a very crucial role for the all-round development of this college. And the college has undergone 3 continuous cycle of NAAC accreditation process, and the institution undergone continuously scaling higher CGPA, which is 3.27 at present, that is in the 3rd cycle. Considering the quality initiative of Nagaon College, NAAC has and UGC has conferred Nagaon College with the recognition of Mentor Institute, which is a very coveted and prestigious position of an institute. And Ministry of Human Resource Development, as now it is known as the Education Department, Ministry of Education, selected Nagaon College for establishment of an institutional innovation cell, which is also a very important prestigious position for us. Very recently, Nagaon College has also been added as a local chapter in the central government Swayam Hotel. With these few words, I'd like to conclude. But before I conclude, I'd also like to thank the faculties of philosophy departments for organizing such a seminar. And I hope that this seminar will be a very successful one. And with the motto for which the seminar has been organized, it will be fully fulfilled. All the participants will be benefited from in this. And with these few words, I would like to conclude. And once again, I thank you all, welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mehdi sir, for briefing about our college. Now I would like to introduce our resource person of today's webinar. I don't think he needs introduction. He is an academic stalwart in academia and in philosophia. So what I'm going to read about him is for those who don't know. Popularly known as K.C. Pandey, Professor Kalicharan Pandey is the head of the Department of Philosophy at University of Lucknow. After his master's and MPhil from Delhi University, he did his PhD from Chaudhry Charan Singh University, Meerut in 2006. Before joining University of Lucknow in 2012, he worked as associate professor at DTU, Gorakhpur University. His areas of interest are analytic, Wittgenstein, Buddhism, contemporary Indian philosophy, epistemology. He delivered lectures and presented papers at many universities in India and abroad. From his huge volume of works, I am only pointing out a few recent ones. Book, this goes like that. Book review, Dharma, categorical imperative, an aspect of Krishna's interpretation of Indian philosophy, discipline in and through language, the multifaceted nature of gender inequality. These are only the recent ones. He has a huge volume of works. Now, thank you, sir. Sir, with this, I'd like to take the pot. Please carry on. It is over to you, sir. Professor Pandey.
Very good afternoon to everybody here present in my presentation. Respected principal of the college, director of IQAC, and coordinator of the seminar, Dr. Ramala Sharma, and head of department of philosophy of the college, and other dignitaries, students, research scholars, and everybody present here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful to you all for being present in my talk, and I'm feeling very happy in this afternoon because the weather in Lucknow is wonderful. It's cloudy a little bit, and there is no summer. In fact, there is no hot season kind of thing. So feeling relaxed, and this is my office from where I am discussing with you concept of duty in Indian philosophy. I'll be like to discuss this concept later on, and I'm going to present some points, some gist of this concept. So I'd like to start my presentation, and that will give a pointed conversation. I suppose that will be better. So here I begin with my presentation point wise. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect. Now I suppose that we can have it properly. Now, when I was invited to give this talk, the first telephone call I got from Dr. Ramala Sharma. Actually, this was the first talk that I had with her in my life. So I didn't know her earlier as to who is Dr. Ramala Sharma earlier. So it was very pleasant to receive a call from an unknown person in philosophy, though we are not unknown, but still, I thought that this is good to get invited from an institute where I have not delivered my talk. Though I have delivered my talk in so many places in Guwahati and then in North Bengal University, then Kolkata, then in Manipur University, and in other places in Northeast. But it is for the first time that I got call from Dr. Ramala Sharma, and it was wonderful talking to her. So I'm grateful to her extra. I mean, I must underline it because she has been very kind to me to catch up with the schedule, and for the learning also yesterday she had with the technician support. Grateful to that technician support as well because he tolerated all my questions. So what I realized is that when I gave this topic, that is the concept of duty, I realized that during COVID period, what is very significant is that we must be aware about what is our kartavya, what is our duty in a particular space and in a particular time. देश और काल के प्रति एक विशिष्ट दृष्टिकोण होना चाहिए हमें, एक सेंस ऑफ ड्यूटी होनी चाहिए. That is what I realized that is why I gave this topic, the concept of duty in Indian philosophy. And the concept of duty is pertinent from the perspective of individual in the individual well-being in the society as well as social well-being. So from these two perspectives, from the perspective of the moral growth of individual in a particular space and time, specifically in this COVID period, as to how to live confined in a particular space, and then from the perspective of society as to what society expects a person to do, I realized that this is the time that we must know as to what is happening these days, as well as what has happened in our past, because we cannot disown our past, our heritage. We have a rich tradition of Indian culture. So that is why I decided that let us speak in this seminar about the concept of duty in Indian philosophy, and let us learn as to what is duty as prescribed by our ancestors. And this is wonderful to know about duty as prescribed in prescribed by our elders, our ancestors, as it is important to perform an aspect of that duty in present COVID-19 situation. So this is the thing, and in this brief talk, basically, I'm going to have a kind of holistic perspective, and that perspective is something only one aspect of, I would say, that concept of duty as discussed in Indian philosophy, because it is not possible to discuss all the aspects of kartavya or duty in Indian philosophy in such a small time span, because when I realized after going through so much literature, I realized that it is not possible to speak everything pertaining to concept of duty. But yes, I will try to present here a gist, and I hope that you'll enjoy it, and I'll be able to give at least to someone something through this talk. So what is duty? I realized after consulting many references that this is the way that we can have concept of duty in Indian philosophy. So it is better to present the gist, the definition from my perspective in the beginning. That is, duty in Indian philosophy could be defined as duty as an act which is expected from a person related to a certain space and time and equipped with free will. The person lives in a particular space and particular time, and the person is equipped with a freedom of will, as well as certain powers of not only office, but powers because of being in a particular space and time of a particular society to perform that act in the sense of an obligation. So I think what is significant is that that space, that is that society, and that time is significant. And from that perspective, free will is important, because without free will, nothing can happen. I mean, if you are not free and you are performing certain actions, then basically your action cannot be judged as to be right or wrong, as to whether you have fulfilled certain duty or whether you have not fulfilled certain duty. So freedom of will is not only here meant only physical freedom, but also mental freedom. So sometimes it happens that you are physically free, but you are mentally not free, because even if you are not changed in a particular space, you are not changed. You are basically free to move in a particular space, but still you cannot do certain things because mentally you are bound by rules and regulations and so many things that you cannot act freely as per your will. So you cannot be ascribed to perform or not perform a certain kind of duty. You cannot be liable of not performing a particular duty assigned to you. So what is important is that there are two aspects of concept of duty in Indian philosophy, I suppose. One is that duty is always related to a particular space, that is particular space in society, and particular time, that is particular time span in which you are living. And second, this is the factual aspect of the concept of duty in philosophy. And the second is that you are free physically as well as mentally. You are free to act from your body and you are free to act from your mind. So the freedom in mind is as important as freedom in body, because bodily freedom is nothing if you have been restricted to speak of your mind. So I'm enjoying my freedom here because I'm given to speak whatever I want to speak. So now I should be responsible that whether I have performed my duty properly or not. If I have performed my duty assigned by Dr. Ramala Sharma, then that has to be adjusted from particular space, particular time, factual aspect, and physical and mental freedom aspect. So, and the next third aspect on the type of these two aspects is the obligation. That is a sense of doing certain act in a particular situation. So this obligation is something which is very essential to concept of duty in Indian philosophy. I suppose this is the gist of the concept of duty in Indian philosophy, and now hereafter we can proceed to fulfill in the gaps as to how to move forward. Now, duty is, as I said, that obligation is obligatory action. Once you have given yourself to a particular space and particular time to perform in a certain ways, then there is no going back. You cannot say now that you are in middle of battlefield that you have changed your mind. So once the decision is taken to perform a particular duty, that duty has to be fulfilled come what may be. So what is important is performance of duty and even at the cost of life. So that is why it is obligatory for a person to perform the duty and get perished in the, because perishing through the passage of performing the duty is preferable than to saving one's own life from the perspective of not performing that duty, because you're not performing your duty is going to make the society ruined. So obligatory duty is obligatory action, and it is the obligation aspect which brings duty, that is karma, kartavya, closer to dharma in the sense of duty. So I'll reflect on dharma also. So what is important is that kartavya, the notion of kartavya or notion of karma in Indian philosophy basically is the notion of duty. So whenever you find the karma, that karma means that the notion of karma means the notion of duty. This is described in so many places, so many texts, and I suppose that I'll be able to get through some texts. So duty as dharma. There are many denotations of the term dharma. As you all know that dharma has been defined in so many ways, and here first let us go directly as it is used in the sense of duty, that is performance of duty, that is in a strict sense of the term. And in the strict sense of the term, I say because there are two senses of the term dharma. One is strict sense of the term, and then one is little relaxed sense of term dharma. In the relaxed sense of dharma, as we'll see, that we will include so many factors in what is dharma. But in the strict sense of dharma, if you see, you realize yourself, then I suppose that that strict sense of dharma is duty and nothing but kartavya. Dharma means kartavya in the strict sense of term. Now, first, I'm reminded about concept of duty or kartavya in Mimamsa section, but I'm not going to teach you what is Mimamsa in Indian philosophy at this platform. Now, just to start it, what I wish to show sense of duty in Indian philosophical context, and then move to other aspects. So, but it is pertinent for me to begin with what is duty, what is kartavya, what is karma in Mimamsa system, because Mimamsa system is the system which directly deals with the it kartavyata, karma through east sadhanata, concept of east sadhanata to be obtained through the concept of duty, that is kartavya. So let us move travel little bit in the realm of Mimamsa. The Mimamsa, that is the system of Indian philosophy which is regarded as system of analysis, interpretation, that is interpretation of Vedic sentences. Mimamsa means interpretation of Vedic sentences. So let us go into what Mimamsa talks about the concept of duty and concept of kartavya, karma, concept of dharma as used in the sense of duty. Now, Chodhana Lakshano Artho Dharma. Here, this is the second sutra of Mimamsa Sutra. This is second sutra of Mimamsa Sutra. It says that what is the feature of dharma? Feature of dharma is basically that it impels to you to perform certain duty. That is, dharma is a command. Chodhana means command or injunction, which inspires one to act or perform one's duty. Thus, here, dharma is duty whose performance results in the attainment of highest goods, that is nisreyas or moksha. So, if you perform certain dharma, you perform certain duty, then you get the nisreyas, that is moksha. Earlier, Mimamsa system, the goal of Mimamsa system was to attain Swarga. Now, later on, as we all know that, Mimamsa system replaced its ideal of Swarga with its ideal of moksha. So, what is the goal of performing duty? That is, the goal of performing duty is to basically get nisreyas. Nisreyas is moksha. According to Mimamsa, there are two kinds of Vedic prescriptions. One, injunctions, that is vidhi, and second is prohibitions, that is nisheda. So, vidhi, that is injunctions, that is commands, are those sentences of Vedas which basically are positively prescriptive propositions which are basically told by Vedas to people follow those injunctions, prescriptions, do those acts. But they are positive duties that you have to do this. You have to do this. And then there are prohibitions, that is nisheda. And nisheda means those sentences, those propositions of Vedas, according to Mimamsa, which prohibit one individual not to perform certain actions. That is, we should not do this. The vidhis are in the form of we must do this, and nishedas are in the form that we should not do this. So, in a way, can say that vidhi and nisheda propositions of Vedas are to be understood in the sense of positive duties and negative duties. Positive duties means the duties are to be performed. You have to do these certain things. And negative duties means you don't have to do these things. You have to keep silence so far as the language is concerned. I don't have to act from your body as well. So mind, body, and act in all accordance, togetherness of these three ways that you have to do, and you don't have to do certain things. You have to perform certain things. You don't have to perform certain things. Now, moving from here, suppose that is, let us move to kinds of duties. So, as we know that in Mimamsa system we have basically two stalwarts. The one is Kumarila, or the Prabhakara. So, Kumarila basically here is quoted by me, and these are Kumarila holds that there are two kinds of duties. One is Laukika, because their prayojana is drashtarthaka. There are Laukika duties, that is duties performing to this world, and they are drashtarthak means they are very much sense experienced, and this Laukika duties are performed. Prayojana means that because prayojana is the cause for obtaining. So Laukika duties are duties whose prayojana, that is whose target, whose end, whose lakshya, whose end is basically drashtarthaka. That means that empirical something in empirical world, that which can be experienced through sense. And the second is paramarthik duties, and those duties are their prayojana, their basically end is drashtarthaka. For example, nisreyas or moksha. So duties according to Kumarila again could be divided into two kinds. One is Laukika and other is Paramarthika. Laukika, that is related to what? Laukika means that what is related to get something in this world, and Paramarthika means what is related to achieve something in the external world, other world, that is Nisreyasa and Moksha. So further classification of duties we find in Mimamsa system, and this is clubbed together for the sake of clarification. They all could be divided into obligatory, optional, and prohibited. So what are those obligatory duties according to Mimamsa? Obligatory duties according to Mimamsa must be performed because their non-performance leads to sin. So there are certain obligatory duties for all individuals in the society to perform those duties, and they must be performed, because if they are not performed by the particular individual, then that means that individual is committing a sin, papa. So in order to avoid papa, you have to perform those obligatory duties, and their performance results in no punya or merit. But the other aspect of that is that if they are basically not performed, if they are not performed, their performance results in no punya. Their performance results in no punya because they are obligatory. They do not result any punya, but their non-performance results in sin. They must be performed because their non-performance leads to sin. However, their performance results in no punya or merit. So there are 2 points. One is nitya, that is Sandhya Vandan, for example. That is morning, evening prayers. Everybody must do morning, evening prayers. It is prescribed. Prescription. This is interpretation of Mimamsa of Vedas, that we must do Sandhya Vandanam, morning, evening prayers. And then Naimittik Karma for special occasions. For example, at the time of this Surya Grahana and Chandra Grahana, we must have some bathing. Or there are many kind of prayashchit kind of karmas, that is Naimittik karmas. And then we have optional, that is Kamya Karma. Kamya Karma may or may not be performed, for their performance leads to merit, but their non-performance doesn't result in sin. So they may or may not be performed. So if you want certain things, you perform these things, these duties. And if you do not want those things, basically don't do those things. But their non-performance doesn't result in sin, because you definitely is not going to commit sin by way of not performing Kamya Karma. Because you don't have any other thing. You basically, performance of Kamya Karma leads to basically some merit, but their non-performance doesn't result in sin. For example, for heaven, action is certain. For example, for heaven, for achieving heaven, as earlier Mimamsa believed, I said that the goal of life is to get heaven after death. But according to later Mimamsa, goal of life is to get moksha. So for example, for getting heaven, स्वर्ग को प्राप्त करने के लिए what we have to do, we have to do certain sacrifices, कुछ बलिदान करने होंगे. और बलिदान क्या है? स्वर्ग कामो यजित, kind of sacrifices, some kind of yajna we have to perform, and those yajnas are called swarga kamo yajit yajna. But if you don't perform them, if you don't perform swarga kamo yajit yajna, you don't commit any sin, but you don't get punya. And if you don't get punya, then you don't go to heaven. This is the basically broad outline. In this broader outline, you can relate the current situation also. But before that, let us go to prohibited prasiddha karma. Prasiddha karma are prohibited duties. Prasiddha karma must not be performed as their performance leads to sin. So there are certain karmas, certain duties, certain negative duties which must not be performed because must not be performed as their performance leads to sin, but their non-performance does not result into merit. So their non-performance does not result into merit. They are prohibited. Their non-performance does not result into merit, but they must not be performed, because if they are performed, they lead to sin. And from here we find that prayaschitta also is mentioned there. Prayaschitta also, as I mentioned, that in naimittik karma, you do certain kind of naimittik karma, that is in the way of prayaschitta, and that to mitigate the ill effects of performance of prasiddha karma. Basically, if you have performed certain negative duties which you did not have performed, then there is a prescription of prayaschitta. Now, whether karma leads to bondage, this is the basic question in the context of duties, because all are performing duties, and karma, as I said, is duty according to both basic schools of Mimamsa, that is Prabhakara and Kumarila. Abstention from action only means abstention from second and third, but not first. The second and third, that means that optional, that is kamya, and prohibited from pratsiddha. So if you are told that not to perform, that is move away from karma, because karma binds, whether karma good karma or bad karma, karma binds, karma provides you bondage. That means that they are basically saying that only you need not perform the optional and prohibited karmas, that is kamya and prasiddha karmas, and you have to perform obligatory karmas, because obligatory karmas, they basically do not bind. This is the basic structure, and in this basic structure we are talking about. And what is that? According to both basic schools of Mimamsa, that is Prabhakara and Kumarila, you have to abstain not from obligatory karmas, but only from kamya karmas and prasiddha karmas, because they are the one which lead to bondage in the life. And then this Prabhakara talks about that karmavada theory, that is duty for duty's sake, that you have to perform your duty without thinking about the result of duty. As to whatever will happen, whatever has been prescribed by Vedas, you have to perform that with the sole objective of not having any objective at all. You have to perform because they are prescribed. You don't have to perform because of swarga and moksha and niska or any other nisreyasa, any other kind of thing. Nisreyasa, moksha or heaven, you don't have to perform. Just you have to perform because it is prescribed in Vedas. That is called karmavada theory of duty for duty's sake, as you say that it is there in Western philosophy also. But Western philosopher like Immanuel Kant talks about duty for duty's sake, and then there are some other Western philosophers like Bradley talks about my station and its duties. But here we are not going into that detail. There is no point in comparing also, because Indian philosophy talks about much more in significant ways, dealing with much more in depth, I suppose, that which is described in Vedas, that is duty for duty's sake. Of Karmavada, of Prabhakara is in-depth analysis of human psychology and human duties. Now, second is Kumarila. Kumarila talks about Jnana Karma Samuchayavada. It has been wrongly stated that Kumarila believes in psychological hedonism. Actually, he holds transcendental Parinamavada. According to me, basically, this is my interpretation of Kumarila, Jnana Karma Samuchayavada, in which he does not only prescribe karma as Prabhakara holds, but Jnana Karma both. His method is that to prescribe Jnana and Karma Samuchayavada, both Jnana and Karma both, that is duty and knowledge, karma and knowledge both, for getting Nisreyas. As different from Prabhakara, Kumarila's point of view is that let us move forward and do what is prescribed in Vedas as a sense of duty, because it's significant, because for Prabhakara there is no because once it is prescribed by Vedas, then it has to perform. But Kumarila, it has to perform because you have to get Nisreyasa. So some philosophers have interpreted that psychological hedonism is the target, because even Nisreyasa is a kind of target, kind of lakshya, kind of goal that one should always have in mind. But no, not only that. Basically, Kumarila, when he talks about transcendental goal, that is Nisreyasa, according to me, basically this could be treated as transcendental Parinamavada, because for him moksha is supreme goal, and if you want to achieve Nisreyasa, then you have to act in a certain ways, and it is a Parinamavada kind of Prakriti Parinamavada, different from Prakriti Parinamavada of Sankhya. You have to accept that Kumarila basically is a kind of transcendental Parinamvada, which talks about that you have to act in certain ways. Ontic or deontic interpretation of ethics, as many philosophers have interpreted that there is a deontic kind of ethics in Prabhakara, and then there is hedonistic kind of ethics in Kumarila. I suppose that both basically talk about deontological ethics, where the supreme goal, niskam karma. Through niskam karma, you need to have target of nisreyas, that is moksha. Now, moving from here, duty as dharma, as apurva. Notion of apurva is very significant, pretty significant, very significant in Mimamsa, and apurva basically here is regarded as unseen power, and here power which is generated through duty, of course, and duty as karya, and Prakaran Panchika of Saliknath as descriptions about duty as karya, and that is that anya karyata, anya east sadhanata. Anya karyata, anya east sadhanata. So karyata basically is related to east sadhanata. East sadhanata is target, lakshya. East, we talk about east, that means that abhist, what you desire, that east sadhanata. East means that which desire. Sadhanata is the sadhana. East sadhana. So karyata means what? Karyata is east sadhana. Karma. Duty is something which you do in order to get something abhist. Abhist basically is nisreyas here in this context. But now the question arises. There are many questions which we are going to talk about. That what is the abhist of this worldly, what is the abhist of otherworldly, that is nisreyasa. So let us differentiate between the ultimate goal is nisreyasa. We have to keep in mind that. What is karyata? It is to be understood in the sense of duty. So karya is duty and the agent is karta. This is in order to clarify the point that sometimes karma is not regarded as duty, but virtually in Mimamsa system you'll find that, and in also we'll see that in other systems also in Indian philosophy, karya means always action is always action oriented, duty oriented action. Karma is nothing if there is no sense of duty. So karma is always karma because there is a sense of duty. Your performance of a certain action has to be so sensitive that you are acting with a sense of duty. So this is the essence of the concept of duty in Indian philosophy. Now, there's a question, because philosophy raises questions. As some Western philosophers also have talked about that philosophy consists of questions, and in Indian philosophy we have a great tradition of sutra, bhasya, vartika, tika. We have a great tradition of dialogue and discussion. So always there is a question, and we must welcome questions. What is question? If karya is duty, then how can it provide me shreyas, moksha? When it is regarded across all philosophical schools that karma, whether good or bad, puts oneself into bondage. How can you say that we have to perform a certain duty? If duty, that is karya, karma, is going to bound you, going to provide you bondage, going to provide you kind of shackles with this word, then why to perform those acts? Because it is regarded through one interpretation that karma, whether good or bad, they lead to nothing but bondage. So the basic question is, why to perform at all duty? Not to perform at all. Let us not to perform anything, because otherwise we'll be bound. And who would like to get bounded? Because there is nothing bad in this world than to get bonded. Freedom is required for everybody. So, why to perform certain act? This is the problem. And this let us dissolve this problem. I say that dissolve because there are no solutions in philosophy but only dissolutions, borrowing a term from again some great philosophers. Let us dissolve this problem. How to dissolve Indian philosophy? Because Indian philosophy on one hand holds that karma leads to bondage, but here certain duties are prescribed. So how to do it? Now there are answers, and we are going to have 3-4 slides on this. First of all, let us go to Bhagavad Gita 4.13. In order to answer this question as to how to solve this problem, first we have to see in Bhagavad Gita that the word karma is treated as duty. Now Bhagavad Gita announces that one has to perform karma, that is duty, as per their station in the society. You have to perform duty which is assigned by society to you. And the station is the society, decided by Iswara as per the particular guna of the self. Chatur Vanyam Maya system Gun Karma Vibhagasam. So the 4 varnas have been created by me through classification of the gunas and duties. So as the particular guna is predominant in you, as certain gunas has its adhikya in your personality, you are classified in a particular kind of varna, and then thereafter certain kind of duties are assigned to you. Then 4.15 Bhagavad Gita again talks about that Evam Yatva Kritam Karma Purvarapi Mumukshusubhi. Having known thus, that is, having known that duties have been assigned as per the qualities of the self, that is Sat, Ras, Tam, the 3 qualities, as according to Sankhya system also, that this body is nothing but the combination of Sat, Ras, and Tam. Duties were performed even by the ancient seekers for liberation. Ancient seekers of liberation, they basically talked about duties as per the qualities of the individual, in which whether Sata is dominant or Rasa is dominant or Tama is dominant. Let us not go into much detail into varnas and duties, but let us see that in present context also, that is the people around you. Some people are Sata predominant, some people are Rasa predominant, and some people are Tama predominant. You all know what is Sata, Rasa, Tama, and then you can decide yourself as to what kind of duty should be provided to that person who basically is having a particular quality. For example, if provide certain duty, certain kind of duties are assigned to a person who is having predominance of Sata, and he is assigned the duty which demands Tama, which demands Rasa, then the person cannot perform that duty properly. Likewise the case with other duties. Likewise the case with other duties, as well as likewise the case with other kinds of personalities who are having predominance of Rasa and Tama. So there has to be congruence among the Sat, Raj, Tama personality gunas, traits, as well as duties assigned to them. So there is a kind of commensurability between the personality trait, personality quality on the one hand, and the duties assigned on the other. If there is no commensurability, there is no dialogue, there is no correspondence between the personality type and the duty type, then there is going to be clash, and there is going to not progress in society. There going to be chaos in society. There going to be no progress in society. So it is very pertinent that the, and one more point, even if it is provided, even if someone chooses to do certain acts which is against one's own nature, then nature that is decided that is to be decided whether the nature is sattvika or rajasika or tamasika, then the person will not enjoy the duties owned by himself. The duties accepted by himself to perform certain duties. So person who basically doesn't like to do certain things, if you do assign those duties to that person who doesn't like to do certain acts, the person will not be happy. And you will not be happy because he is not happily doing that thing. And then there is a chaos between you and him. That is the owner and the person who is doing duty. The person that the entire system will get collapsed if there is a kind of mismatch between the personality type and the duty type. So this is pretty significant from the perspective as well. The literary perspective is very significant because you have to keep into mind that the personality type has to be according to the duty type. Now let us go to another point as described in Bhagavad Gita 4.16, and that is the problem as to how to answer the question karma leads to bondage. Now, if karma, that is duty, leads to bondage, then why to do duty at all? This is an eternal problem to identify one's duty, and let us accept that this problem has become much more deeper in the context of current situation as to what to do and what not to do, because what not to do is also kind of to do, because what you are not doing also you are doing. You cannot say, living in a particular space and time of a society, that if you are not acting, that means that you are basically not acting. You cannot say that, because if you are acting, that is also acting. Not action is also an action, in brief. So it is said in Bhagavad Gita 4.16 that kim karma, kim akarmit, kavayo petra mohita. Even the intelligent are confounded as to what is duty and what is not duty. So why are you worried much about as to what is the bondage, what is karma? Only you have to also worried about as to what to do, what not to do. I mean, that is not the only problem as to duty leads to bondage. This is one problem, but this is also a problem to identify as to what to do, what not to do. And it has been told in Bhagavad Gita 4.16 that even intelligent persons of the past, our ancestors, have been confused in a particular space and time as to what to do, what not to do. That is, moral dilemmas have been occurring throughout the history of human beings. So we have been in moral dilemma as to do not, what not to do, what to do, what not to do, and if we are doing, as to why we are doing, and we are not doing, why we are not doing. The arguments of doing and arguments of not doing are sometimes go parallel. So we have to decide as to how to come out of this dilemma. And then we find solution in 4.14. And solution of the problem has been clearly stated in 4.14. And that is, namam karmani limpanti na me karm phale spriha itimam yo vijanati karma virana sa baddhate. Actions do not taint me. For me, there is no hankering for the results of actions. One who knows me thus does not become bound by me. So here, Ishwar Krishna preaches to Lord Krishna preaches to Arjuna that what is karma, what is akarma, and you once know me, then basically there will not be much hankering about the results of acts. If there is no result, if your orientation is not the result of the action, then basically that action, that duty, that karma is not going to bound you. What is the boundness? Basically, boundness comes through the desire to achieve something. And if there is no desire to achieve something through a particular kind of duty, then the bondage will not come. So the solution is niskam karma, therefore. And that is performance of duty without attachment to the result. And then we come to 18.49 of Bhagavad Gita. He whose intellect remains unattached to everything, who has conquered his internal organs and his desires, attains through sannyasa the supreme perfection consisting in the state of one free from duties. असक्त बुद्धि असक्त बुद्धि सर्वत्र गीतामा विगत स्पृह नैष्कर्म्य सिद्धि परमाम संन्यास परमाम संन्यासेना दिगच्छति. That is, you have to remain unattached to everything. So, even if you are delivering a talk, something happening in background, you don't have to worry about that. Let it happen. So, your intellect basically remains unattached to everything. When you conquer that, your internal desire, that means that is called karma sannyasa in Bhagavad Gita. So, with the sense of karma sannyasa, you do certain duties, that their duties are not going to bound you, not going to provide you problems in life. Now, is there any other option? No, there is no option. There is no other option to get rid of the problem. And what is the problem? There is no other option available to the person who is looking for the clarification about what to do and what not to do. That is what is duty and what is not duty.
Sorry, Dr. Jyotirmoy, please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Dr. Jyotirmoy.
So the only option is that Mahajano in Gatasa Pantha. That is, we have to follow the path when we are in a confused state of mind as to what to do, what not to do. And here, as described in Bhagavad Gita 4.15, Purvarapi. Purvarapi is significant. This Purvarapi is significant because here it is talked about this word Purvarapi. Purvarapi means that ancient seekers of liberation, they are Purvarapi. That what they have followed, that is Mahajano in Gatasa Pantha as described, that we have to follow this mantra in case of dilemma. So this word, that is Purvarapi, in the context of concept of duty in philosophy, becomes really pertinent, very significant. And we don't have to forget this in order to dissolve the dilemma of a particular situation as to what to do, what not to do. Now, we have found that this in Bhagavad Gita 2.47, this is quite famous. That is Karmani Vadikaraste Ma Phales Kadachana. That is, your right is basically limited to the realm of your performance of duty alone. You have no right in the realm of results. So there are two realms. One is the realm of your duty and the realm of your results. Because results are not results basically, they do not basically come out of your performance of a certain duty in a particular manner, because results are basically culmination of so many conditions, positive and negative conditions are pretty significant, as you have a notion of Anitha Siddhas in Nyaya Vaisesika also, that they need not be there. That means that they need to be not there, that Anitha Siddhas, for the attainment of particular lakshya. So from that perspective, say that to understand the concept of duty. And whether Niskam Karma and impossibility, recently we have some discussions in contemporary Indian philosophy, in the contemporary world, philosophers from abroad, basically Western philosophers, and some Indian philosophers with Western mind set, I would say, that they're talking about that the concept of Niskama Karma as described in Bhagavad Gita is an impossibility. I would say that what they are thinking is something illogical. Illogical based on our own verifications in life. That is, it is our daily life experience that when we expect less, we enjoy more. Just think about certain target in your life, certain aim in your life, certain goal in your daily life, that you just think and do certain things. That I do certain things because this will happen to me. So you are not attached properly to performing your duty but getting that result. I need 98% marks in examination. You are not thinking about what you are studying, but you are thinking of 98%, 99%, 100 percentile. Yes. What happens? Your concentration is gone. Arjuna, when he was about to pierce the eyes of the fish in the court of the king, where this uh, competition was there, then he was asked that what you are seeing. That he said that I am seeing nothing but the eye of the fish. So you don't have to think whether I will be able to hit the eye of the fish or not. If you are thinking that whether it will happen or that will happen, if this will happen, then what will happen? If that will happen, then what will happen? Then I suppose that there is a mismatch in the concentration. Then there is a disturbance in the concentration. So you're not concentrated to perform your duty. That is why Bhagavad Gita says that you have to think about only duty and not about the result, because result comes out with so many factors. It is not that you are doing. If somebody is saying that I did like this I basically signifies ego. Ego is not performing anything. You're not doing anything. Basically, you are an agent and karta. All right, you have all freedom, but the freedom doesn't mean that you'll achieve something in the external world. What is basically beyond that is external to you. External to you has to be understood in the sense of external to the mind as well as external to the body. They are not your control. What is in control is your own acts. So Niskam Karma is judicious prescription by Bhagavad Gita. Niskam Karma has to be part and parcel of our duty. We have to perform our duty, not to think about result as to whether this will happen if I don't perform, what will happen if I want to perform and fail to perform. So these things are not to be thought about at the time of performance of particular duty. Living a joyous life is proportionate to living a reduction in the levels of expectation. So expectations, basically, as we reduce our expectations, we basically increase the joyous life. It is basically negatively proportionate. Living a joyous life is basically not positively proportionate to living high with the expectations, levels of expectation. Basically, there is a kind of negative relationship between living a joyous life and basically having the higher expectation. So as you reduce your expectation, you live a higher, better life. So living a better life has to be target of our all duties and how to do better life than to perform Niskam Karma. And what Niskam Karma sometimes is doubted. I said this is possible or not, but here it is basically not sannyasa of karma. So those who prescribe that we don't have to perform anything, because that is not the point. Because you cannot remain alive in the world without performing any particular act, without performing certain duties. And that is why Bhagavad Gita basically prescribes not sannyasa of karma, that is, but it is sannyasa in karma. Sannyasa in karma means when you're doing duty, you're not thinking about the result, but you're thinking about the proper performance. That is the target you have to hit properly. It is not relinquishing of the word of duties, but it is relinquishing in the word of duties. That is performance of duties without being attached to their results, that is fruits. And there's no need to explore further Niskam Karma. This Niskam Karma is a little bit typo, but Niskam Karma basically there are many discussions about this point in Indian philosophy, so I'm not going to enter into that, as that might take another discourse on Niskam Karma, and then we'll have some other discussions maybe some other time. But Niskam Karma concept is pretty significant from the perspective of performance of duty in Indian philosophy. So let us take up another issue, that is dharma as duty. Dharma and duty basically are pretty significant related to each other, but dharma has been treated in the sense of duty also. And in my view, although both have been used as synonymous terms, however, the denotative meaning of dharma is broader as compared to duty. So, the denotation of the karma, dharma, is something more extensive than the denotation of the term duty. Duty is a subset of concept of dharma. Though I maintain this, but this may be a debatable issue. I accept this, but there are many interpretation of concept of dharma, and therefore I hold this position that dharma, concept of dharma, is broader term in which concept of duty as karma or kartavya is to be regarded as a subset. Duty as karma is a subset of dharma, and it has been used in many contexts. So I feel that dharma has many uses. Yeah, there are many interpretations of the concept of dharma, and the word dharma has occurred in Rig Veda at many places. In Rig Veda, we find, for example, Prathama Dharma, Sanata Dharmani. It's a wonderful word, dharma. We are using dharma now, and our ancestors in Rig Veda period used this dharma. It feels nostalgic in Indian culture, the culture in which we are living. The same word which we are using currently, the word dharma, has been used in Rig Veda. In Chandogya Upanishad, we find Trayo Dharma. 3 kinds of dharma has been defined in Rig Veda, in Chandogya Upanishad: Yajna, Adhyana, and Dana. And in Taittiriya Upanishad, Satyam Vad Dharmam Cha, as we find these propositions, these precepts of our daily life, Satyam Vad Dharmam Cha, in so many valedictory programs, so many degree awarding ceremonies, when we have so many programs in universities, that Satyam Vad Dharmam Char, these are the pravachana of our ancestors, which is given to those who have received degrees at the time they are being awarded that. So Satyam Vad Dharmam Char. Then there are many uses, as I said, that in Gita, Swadharme Nidhanam Shreya. So Gita talks about Swadharma, that we have to do duty as pertain to your time and space. And you don't have to perform duties as that which is not belonging to your kind of varna, that is your guna, whether you are sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. And then Manusmriti talks about 5 kinds of dharma, that is varna dharma, ashram dharma, then varna ashram dharma, then naimittik dharma, for example, prayaschit, as I mentioned earlier, as a part of obligatory karmas. And then there's a gun dharma, that is duties of king. And then yato abhyudaya nishreyas siddhi sadharma. Dharma is that which is one through which one can achieve worldly joys as well as moksha. You find in Vaisheshika Sutra. And then there are more uses of concept of dharma. Ahimsa parmo dharma, Anushilin Parv 115.1 Mahabharata. And then you find achara paramo dharma, Manusmriti 1.108. And then Buddhism talks about 2 senses of dharma. In Buddhism, we find many uses of the term. There is dharma as teachings of Buddha, and dharma as shubha vasana, that is good disposition. Now, due to paucity of time, I wanted to describe more about Buddhism here, because Buddhism is one of my favorite area. But then we had to finish in a particular space, particular time, this talk. So, though I wanted to say more things, but I'm going again to restrict myself. I'm going to Jainism. Dharma is subtle, corporeal particles of matter, that is Pudgala, which produces effects as dharma. And then there are these some of the last uses of dharma, which I have summarized, taken out as a gist, some selected some points as to dharma as a duty, and not went much more into deeper. The more exhaustive interpretations of dharma as duty is there available in Indian philosophy. Sankhya talks about particular modification of mind, manas, as dharma. And then Vaisheshika, a specific quality of self as dharma. Nyaya talks about an unseen quality of the self produced by the performance of prescribed duties as dharma. Then Sabara Bhasya talks about dharma is conducive to the highest good, that is shreyas of the moral agent. Then thus, dharma has many meanings. That dharma has been interpreted and misinterpreted by many philosophers. here we are concerned with the meaning of dharma as duty only. And in the last portion of my talk, maybe I would like to say that Apad Dharma is pretty significant in these days of lockdown and COVID-19, because Apad Dharma is the concept of Apad Dharma is relevant, much talked about these days. Apad Dharma is the dharma, Apad is the term, Apad is the term which means that distress, that is misfortune as calamity, calamity of time which has put you in a negative state of mind. And Apad Dharma is the dharma which is basically prescribed for that particular moment of time, a practice only allowable in distress. Otherwise, it is not allowable. Sir Merriam-Webster basically talks about that Apad Dharma. We find in this dictionary, Sir Merriam-Webster's dictionary, that is Apad Dharma is the dharma which is practiced only in distress. Otherwise, it is not allowed. And in Chandogya Upanishad, section 10 and 11, we find Usasti Chakrayan Katha. And here a very brief, I have taken one concept from sloka in section T of Chandogya Upanishad. That is Etasam mi dehiti. That means that Usasti Chakrayana was hungry. He was hungry and he was with wife, and as it is our culture, but that we don't eat anybody jutha. And he was in a place where there was nothing eatable, but there was a person who basically used to look after elephants of a particular place, and that particular person was having pulses. And Usasti Chakrayan begged to give him some pulses. So, and ate that. So, that eating basically was done by Usasti Chakrayan in order to save his life. And when the person who donated these pulses, which he was himself eating, to Usasti Chakrayan, asked for water, that you take some water also from me and drink it after you have ate this pulse in order to because you are hungry. So that water was not taken by Usasti Chakrayan by way of saying that I don't need water in order to survive. Of my hunger, of my life is saved because I have had this pulse now, and I will not have water because my Apad Dharma was to save my life through eating something, whatever is available at this moment of time in order to live. Otherwise, I would not have lived, I would have died. So, but I can survive without water. So here, this Chandogya Upanishad section 10 and 11, it's a very famous katha about the nature of Apad Dharma in a particular situation when the person is in distress or misfortune, where the person's existence is at the stake. There is no other option but to do certain things to be alive in a particular situation. So Apad Dharma is the condition. I suppose that we are all living in a situation where we have to follow the Apad Dharma. And now, from the traditional interpretations, I suppose that we need to go to a recent study by a philosopher, Western philosopher, and that is that Elisa Presky, and she is talking about authority, concept of authority in Mimamsa, and it is basically a paper published in History of Indian Philosophy, written by Purushottam Bilimoria, Routledge 2020. And in this paper, Elisa basically talks about there is a relationship between Dharma as an epistemic content and Veda as a source of knowledge, as we all know that. And we follow that. Astika systems believe that Vedas are the source of knowledge. And Elisa has established that there is a kind of relationship between this Astic belief that Vedas are source of knowledge and on the other hand, Dharma as epistemic content. When you say that Dharma as epistemic content, there is some kind of duty also is prescribed in that element. So dharma as duty in the epistemic content on the one hand, and Veda as a source of knowledge on the other hand, could be regarded as there is a kind of relationship between these two. So dharma as an epistemic content and Veda as a source of knowledge, as established by Ilsa this paper. For Ilsa, Prabhakara, Kumaril, and Mandan Misra, all three scholars of Mimamsa used prescriptive language for human beings. So they are prescribed as their interpretations of Vedic sentences, Mimamsa. They believe that all sentences of any language, basically, they are of all sentences of, basically here in the context of Vedanta, Vedas, suppose. Vedas are basically prescriptive sentences so far as human beings are concerned. Prescriptive means that to perform certain duties. From that perspective, this paper is significant, I suppose. So we see that the prescriptive element of the notion of dharma is karma, that is kartavya, that is duty. So though there may be many interpretations of the concept of dharma, that this is quality, this is regarded as element of certain attribute, or certain in Buddhism it is regarded as something in Jainism. But what is significant according to me is that the kartavya and that is duty as an element of dharma in Indian philosophy, because Indian philosophy is a very vibrant philosophy. It has a systematic dialogue in it inbuilt. So it has concept of duty as prescribed in its concept of dharma. So duty and moral dilemmas, we have little bit reflection on this, but I suppose that is not sufficient. But in Mahabharata we find that many moral dilemmas, and we find that Ramayana, that is we find that Ram and Ravana Yuddha, the war in Ramayana, and we have this Mahabharata, that is regarded as Dharma Yuddha. So we more use Dharma Yuddha as Mahabharata and not war of Rama, that is Ramayana. So why it is Dharma Yuddha, Mahabharata? Why it is regarded as Dharma Yuddha? Because in many contexts we find that agents of those war, whether it is Arjuna, whether it is other Pandavas or Krishna, they are shown to be living in a dilemmic position. That is, dilemmic position is position where a man is confused as to what to do, what not to do. So duty and the duty in the context of a position where it is not decidable, it is not basically very conducive to decide. It's not basically very easy to decide as to what to do. It's not very comfortable situation, basically. It's not conducive situation, so to say. So in that situation, this Indian philosophy, Indian context dependent judgment is pretty rich in Indian philosophy, and we have insights as scattered throughout various texts in Indian philosophy. And performance of duties and sanskaras play significant part. That is why inculcation of samskara is essential for the realization of the significance of duties, that is kartavya bodha. That is why we all take care about our children. We are very much careful about our children as to what they are doing, what they are not doing, why they are doing this, why not doing that. And this taking care of children in the time of COVID-19 is pretty significant, pretty relevant, pretty necessary, I suppose, that inculcation of samskaras, because once you have particular sanskaras, then you will perform your duty in a particular way. That is why researches by research scholars also is regarded as to be having a particular, if you are a research scholar having particular sanskara, then the person, the student, the scholar will do well. But if there is some kind of shortcut, some kind of not doing good research is inculcated in the personality itself, then it is going to be bhayankar for his life future. So it should not be chaotic life. It should be chaotic life. It will be chaotic life if the person has not been inculcated the proper samskaras, and because ignorance is not an excuse. Even if you do not certain things, if you don't know about certain things that and you do wrongly, then there is only prescription is prayashchit duties. But then prayashchit, by way of doing prayashchit duties, you are not doing kamya duties. That means that if you're not doing kamya duties, you're not going to get what you wanted to get. So have to be some role of sanskara is pretty significant. And in this sanskara, so far students are concerned, we all teachers are concerned with more concerned with if anyone then students, and the students think about that student-teacher relationship. In Raghuvans Mahakavyam Pancham Sarg, when a student has concluded his study and he has to get something for his guru in the form of Guru Dakshina, he goes and begs in the court of Raghu, and that is Tamadhware Visjusiti Sam Raghu. In Raghuvans Mahakavyam we have Pancham Sarg. Tamadhware Visjusiti Sam Nisir Visrani Jos Jatam Pati Vidyo Guru Dakshina Si Kausa Prapede Bartan Sisya कौत्स के पास रघु की परंपरा में कौत्स प्रपेदे वर्तंतु शिष्य, कौत्स के पास जाता है वर्तंतु का शिष्य गुरु दक्षिणा के लिए. That was the days, the duty of students, the relationship between student and teacher. Think about it in our Indian culture. So as a student, this is my duty to perform as my teacher says. This has been the duty. The students are bound to be in the world that guidance is being provided. Otherwise, it is regarded that they are not performing their duties. So from the point of our students, suppose that this was very significant so far as we stick to current life situations and student-teacher relationship. And challenges of the current times are too much in the modern world, the science and technology. Think about so many gadgets. If a student is performing in a particular manner, then I suppose that the violating certain kind of duties and the committing certain cyber crimes, and person is not realizing that he is committing cyber crimes. So many crimes are happening by students also in current days. To be very careful about what you are doing. A single click can destroy your own word, quote unquote. The word is derailed with a single click. So you have to be very careful about the pertinent uses of particular duties, positive and negative. So negative duties, that is absence of not doing certain things, is also important. So in the end, suppose that this is very pregnant to say that Janami dharmam nachame pravitti, Janami adharmam nachame nivitti. So if you Duryodhana says in Mahabharata like this, I know that what is my dharma, what is my duty, but I have no tendency to do certain things, those things which are I am bound to do because I am duty bound, and I know that what not to do, but I not stop myself doing that. So basically, Duryodhana mixes between positive duty and negative duties. What he has to do, doesn't do. What he has not to do, he does that. So, Janami dharmam nache me pravitti, Janami adharmam nache me nivitti. This has to be understood properly in the context of current situation. And there are many more threats, many more talks, many more dilemmas, many more issues, many more potent ideas to be discussed as discussed in the current one. But I would like to restrain myself because we have been running, I think, out of time. So maybe like some other time. So thank you very much for inviting me, Dr. Ramala Sharma. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Really enlightening, very enlightening speech. So you have started with the concept of karma, then it's different meanings and uses in different schools, particularly Mimamsa school, then Gita's Niskama Karma, then Apada Dharma for the first time I'm listening. So I'm really thankful to you, sir. really, when it comes to performing duty in society, it is really a big question how to attain self well-being, keeping in mind the social well-being. Indeed, sir, we are really thankful for this enlightening speech. And before I go to say something, some words of appreciation, I would like to say that our participants have filled the chat box with a lot of the comments. So they are saying that it is valuable talk, nice presentation, wonderful presentation, sir. I wish I could read all to you, but due to the restraint of time, sir, no, so I'll send it to you. Now, with this, I'd like to pick up some questions because our participants have already dropped some questions, and the questions already that I have are: first one, what do you mean by transcendental Parinamavada? How would you relate this with deontology? This is the question. Would you be pleased to answer, sir?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and I appreciate the person who asked this. This is my term, that is Transcendental Parinamvada, which is closer to Brahma Parinamvada, as we have in Ramanuja system. So I'm very much impressed with the Brahma Parinamvada of Ramanuja, and we suppose that Mimamsa basically is leaning towards Brahma Parinamvada of Ramanuja, that is Transcendental Parinamvada. And basically it is a deontic position, as I also mentioned, but so far as the ultimate analysis is concerned, and deontic position is basically related to the empirical world, I suppose. And when you transcend this empirical world and go into the world of Nisreyasa interpretation of Mimamsa, then in that context we can have rather Brahma Parinamvada or Transcendental Parinamvada kind of interpretation, and I suppose that this will hold. This much sufficient for.
Thank you, sir. Now, another question that I have is there any difference between karma and duty?
Yeah, this is really
Karma and,
yeah.
so is there any difference between karma and duty?
Wonderful question again. In Indian philosophy, I suppose that there is no difference between karma and duty. All the acts are acts as prescribed. So there are two kinds of karma. One is positive, other is negative. Duties as positive duties and negative duties. So whatever you are doing, that may be classified as obligatory karmas or optional karmas. Or karmas basically are two. One is obligatory karmas and optional karmas. The obligatory karmas may be nitya and naimittika. For example, moving your hand, this is also karma, but it could be regarded as obligatory karma, not as something which is kamya karma. So from that perspective, though this position is philosophically problematic, I maintain it, but it needs much more discussion and debate and argument to establish that as to how karma in Indian philosophy, much more support we need with references as to how karma in Indian philosophy is nothing but duty of different kinds, whether positive or negative.
Thank you, sir. There is another question, that is, does moksha depend on karmas?
That's significant. That because karma is regarded as something which it binds you. Bondage basically is that whatever karma, whether it is good or bad, because we believe in law of karma. Law of karma says that whether you do good or whether you do bad, that is going to have some kind of consequence. Now, then, how could karma lead to liberation? This is the question, because it is a significant question, because we believe that there is a law of karma and we cannot do away with whatever we have done. From this perspective, if karma leads to bondage, then how can it lead to liberation? Now, in this context, as I also presented, that karma leads to bondage if there is a kind of desire to get some kind of fruit from your action. Because it happens in our daily life also. You see that if you are not concentrated on achieving something in your life through a particular task, then you'll be less disappointed. and you'll be less disappointed. That means that you'll be less in bondage and much more in liberation, that is happiness. Liberation is to be understood more in the worldly context, in this way, that if you reduce your expectation, then you live a happier life than as compared to if you increase your expectation. Now if you keep on adding this through infinite continuum, then I suppose that you lead to that point where basically karma, without expecting the result of that karma, that is duty without expecting result, will lead to nishreyasa. And this is Jnana Karma Samuchayavada, is established by Kumarila, madam. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Should I take up a couple of questions more?
Yeah, sure. I remain
Okay.
here.
So one of the questions go like this: what to do or not to do is an inner conflict between mind and intellect. The mind says one thing, and the intellect says something different. How to resolve this conflict in the light of the Mimamsa school?
In Mimamsa school, there is an analysis, that is analysis of action. In any kind of decision which you take, basically you go through three processes. One is first process is wish. You desire something, and that wish is a baseless kind of idea coming into mind. So that is why it is said that be careful that something what is coming to your mind, you have to be very guard to what is coming to your mind. Not everything come to your mind. One is wish, and there is will. That wish through the process of time get strengthened, and that wish becomes will. Once you see some certain thing in, for example, in a particular website that you have to buy it, you ignore it. Again, it comes to you through in the form of advertisement. Then you say, okay, ignore it. It comes 10 times to your mind. Then your mind basically unknowingly moves from the state of wish to the state of will. Now you don't know that. The strange, mysterious thing about your mind is that you do not know that this has been converted into will, though it has been converted and staying in your mind. From wish, the journey from wish to will, and then at the third stage, this journey from wish to will goes into the journey of action, that is duty. So you take this as your duty. So I suppose that this analysis of wish, will, and action is to be understood fully in order to appreciate Mimamsa position.
Thank you, sir. There is another question. What is the social and political aspects of karma in present contemporary world?
Present contemporary world, basically we have to think that what is our duty in our space and time. First of all, we have to understand that we can help others if we can help ourselves in this current situation. So, most important thing is that not to get infected by the thoughts of others, which is not relevant for us, but they act as a poison. Many times, in not COVID situation also, some thoughts basically act as poisonous, and we have to be very careful about that those things are not entering into your mind. That is why kusangati and susangati are two aspects which are emphasized in Indian context. That God provide me susangati, and please do not provide me kusangati. And in this point is pretty significant in contemporary world, because in contemporary political world we see that what is happening in America and what is happening in Europe, what is happening in China, what is Europe happening in Pakistan. We all are aware as to how we Indians have been snatched our rights in a certain ways. We have to see as to what is the thing which is traveling most. We have to understand our life form. We have to understand our political situation, and I think this is the time that we have to assert our identity. That is Indianness. Yes.
Thank you. Let me take one more questions. What are the standards to be followed in a situation of moral dilemma according to Indian ethics?
What may I ask the question again, ma'am? Like, what is the question?
Okay, Kim, what are the standards to be followed in the situation of moral dilemma according to Indian ethics?
Yes, that is the consciousness of duty. There are two things: conscience, conscience of duty, and performance of that duty. So, in a dilemmic condition, in a moral dilemmic condition, we have to understand that what is the consign of duty, what is the essence of duty. I have many examples in Indian context. See that when a particular player's father is no more in a particular day, but he is going to play that game. A particular father is no more, but the person is going to have batting. I'm not taking name of anybody, but you see that you get impressed. The person, irrespective of his personal situation, is going to perform for the society, for India's sake. Now, this happens in the case of dilemmic conditions that you have kind of dilemma as to what to do, this or that. So in Indian ethics, it is prescribed that you go with the conscience of your consciousness. That will never lie if you justify with the present context and what is your duty. So consciousness, conscience of duty is something which is prescribed in Indian context. One has always to think about it. That respecting others, that respecting other element is equally good. If I respect you, ma'am, then I'll get respect. In this is the precept of Indian culture, and we have to namaskaram not to the physical body but to the soul inside the body. So this has to be understood in the dilemmic condition, that we have to be very careful in the dilemmic condition, and that is the deciding factor.
Thank you so much. We have actually a lot of questions. So I have, dear participants, I have taken down all the questions and I'll mail to our resource person as we are running out of time. That's why we'd like to conclude this question and answer session. But I assure you that I'll send all the questions to resource person and he'll be answering. Yes. So we have come almost to the end of our session. I'd like to request my colleague, Dr. Navaprasad Nath, to deliver his vote of thanks. And before that, I would like to request host to drop his feedback link.
Thank
Over
you,
to you,
Madam.
Navaprasad.
Thank you, Madam. Am I audible? Hello? Yeah.
Yes,
Am I
you are
audible?
audible. Yes, yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I, Navaprasad Nath, faculty member of the Department of Philosophy of this college. On behalf of the department, would like to start vote of thanks. At the outset, I express my gratitude to Professor K.C. Pandey, the resource person from Department of Philosophy, Lucknow University. Sir, your thought-provoking speech has really opened our eyes in many dimensions of our life. Different, different understanding about duty you have focused on, particularly in the Indian context. Thank you, sir, again for accepting our invitation as the resource person. We, we are really grateful to you, sir, for your acceptance. I offer my gratitude to the respected principal, sir, the man behind all these academic activities of our college. Sir, your active role in all the aspects has definitely encouraged us to go ahead. Thank you, sir. I am thankful to the coordinator IQAC, Dr. K.K. Medhi, sir, then the assistant coordinator IQAC, Dr. Bhuvan Sutia, and all the members of IQAC for playing active role to make the webinar successful. I must offer my gratitude to Dr. Thiken Das, Assistant Professor of our college, and Dr. Madhurya Lalung, Assistant Professor of Physics Department of our college, for their kind help in technical area. I am thankful to all the faculty members of the Department of Philosophy of our college, starting from HOD, Professor Bhupal Kolita, sir, and the coordinator, Dr. Ramala Madam, for their sincere effort to make the webinar a grand success. Last but not the least, I am thankful to all the esteemed participants from different places of the country and abroad for encouraging us by their active participation. Hope you will bring the message of the webinar to the society of your respective places. And I would like to promise here that we shall meet again in such platform, and definitely it will be organized by our department. We shall meet again all the esteemed participants. With this hope, and in the time of pandemic, I pray to God for of your good health. And with this hope, I would like to conclude the vote of thanks. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Madam, Ramala Madam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noah Prasad Nath, for your vote of thanks. And once again, I'd like to thank our resource person for accepting our invitation and coming over here and enlightening with the concept of beauty from the perspective of Indian philosophy. Actually, we are really, really enlightened by your speech, and there are so many new things you have added in your presentation. And I wish if you drop your presentation to us, and if possible, please send us so that we can share with our participants. Okay, just listening and seeing is not enough. If we have that presentation in our hands, we can revise and we can read and we can make read between the lines also. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you all. Thank you, Principal Sir, for allowing us to organize such a webinar. And I'd like to thank all the participants, my colleagues, and all those who I cannot name. Thank you once again, all of you.